Okay. Good morning.
Everyone was looking funny. Chef and my father on the same flight and right next to each other.
When coming back now? Okay. Okay. Today we're going to start in the middle of the page. Tashma, Liyita Adam, Elon Samach Lasada. That's on page 18a. Yud Chesam Ad Aleph. Liyita Adam, Elon Samach Lasada. Okay. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. In the process of learning, we should have the basic Mikdash immediately. Learning the Nishma, Savagol, the Basbar, Yaman, and the Sounds of Ben Sian. Also, for Fur Shlema, for Avram, David Ben Sarah, and Gedalia Getzel Eliezer Ben Fitzpatrick. Okay, so we had a machlekes between Abaya and Rava. If the first person that wants to do something in his property has to be concerned about what his neighbor's going to want to do later. You're going to dig a pit. Your neighbor won't be able to dig a pit. So you have to already distance in your property itself. So Abaya was not concerned about that, and Rava was concerned. Now we had two versions of Abaya and Rava. In what case specifically was their argument? Okay, now we start Tashma. Come and listen. It says, Layita Adam Ilan Samach Lasada. Person should not plant a tree next to his neighbor's field. Unless he distances from the field 4 amas. Now there's two issues here. The shot here, the way Rashi puts it, is that as we'll see, let's go a drop further. The Tani Allah was taught on this, that what's our concern? Dalit Amish Amr. Why did they say you have to distance 4 amas? Because the vineyard needs to be able to, you have to get around the trees, to plow around the trees. That helps the water seep in so that the roots could get the water. And also when they would harvest, they would have a wagon that they would travel around, they would pull around the trees. You needed space for the work of the vineyard. Okay. Time, what's the reason why you need the 4 amas that when you plant a tree, because you need it to be able to do work around the vineyard. But if not for that issue, samach, then you're allowed to be to plant all the way up close. What are we seeing? That the kashrashim, the kamaski. 1 second. What about the roots? When you plant the tree, the roots spread. He said they spread 25 amas. They spread 25 amas. You're going to affect your neighbor from being able to dig a pit. You're going to affect him from being able to plant, to plow. The roots are going to interfere with his field. So why are we saying that the whole issue here is because of the work of the vineyard? What about the roots? Yeah. Yeah, here we're saying a tree or a vineyard, right? So we didn't differentiate yet, right? Yeah. In a moment, something else is going to come up. So what are we dealing with? We're talking about where in the ground there's a hard rock. It's like a bedrock in the ground, and the rock is blocking the roots from spreading to the neighbor's field. So our whole concern is really only about getting around the tree to be able to do work. That's why you have to distance your tree from your neighbor's field 4 amas. We don't have a concern about the roots. If we would have a concern about the roots, then you wouldn't be allowed to plant a tree within 25 amas from your neighbor. Here we're saying that the reason why you were allowed to was because there was a rock there that was blocking. Now all of this is a kasha and Rava, because according to Abaya, so what? You're allowed to do whatever you want, first come first serve. According to Abaya, this wouldn't be a problem. According to Rava, that says that you're not allowed to move up all the way up to your neighbor's field. So how was he allowed to plant the tree in the first place? So we answered that that's because there was a rock. Okay, now there's 2 versions to the next Gemara. One version is Dekanami Diktani. One version is I'll prove it to you because it was taught further. The other version is we're done with the Gemara. And now we start with Tashima. Come and listen to a new piece. That is the version of the Meser Sashas. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Whatever the case is, it says now, let's say there was a wall between the two areas, the vineyard and the field. It says look at this. You're allowed to plant all the way up to the wall. Now here it seems that we're dealing with the issue of kalayim. And when it comes to kalayim, forbidden mixtures. You can't mix a vineyard with grain. So here, if there's a wall, then it's acceptable. So the problem is, let's see, the tests. It says, the problem is that you're allowed to plant all the way up to the wall. What about the roots? What about the roots? Shouldn't there be a problem with the roots? The roots are going to go in and it's going to affect if the other person wants to dig a pit. You won't be able to. Can't make a swimming pool.
If he plants a tree, it takes like 20 years for it to grow to the size of it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
now, that was an answer that we gave. The Gemara before gave that there's direct damage, and then there's that's an answer that we gave. But Rabbi Yossi allows a person to do whatever he wants in his field. And nevertheless, we had one case where Rabbi Yossi said that you can't. So he said, why does Rabbi Yossi say that over there all of a sudden he's strict? He says because over there when he was digging, that was a direct damage, weakened it right away. But on the other hand, Rabbi Yossi's opinion would follow your opinion, and it's not a direct damage. Yonatan is bringing up that it takes time for the roots to grow. That's Rabbi Yossi's logic, that you're not doing a direct damage and you're doing whatever you would need in your property. Okay. So the Gemara now answers this. How are you allowed to plant all the way up to the wall? What about the roots? They're going to block. And according to Rava, you're inhibiting your neighbor from being able to dig a pit. So if you look now at the test in the Meser Sashas, he adds in an answer. He adds in words. It says, Achanami b'tzunma. That case is also talking about where there's a rock. It means there's a rock in the ground. The wall only helps above ground. What about in the ground? The person can't dig a pit. My answer is that there's a rock there. I'm not sure if it's in your English translations.
Yeah.
The Gemara says if there's a rock, Yachi Ema Seifa, let's go further. It says, let's say the roots were spreading into the neighbor's field. You're allowed to trim away your neighbor's roots 3 tvachim deep in your own field. You're allowed to cut the roots that are going into your fields, go down 3 tvachim. And why is that? Because the soil on the top that gets plowed is going to get the plow is going to get blocked by the roots. So you cut away those roots so that the plow should move easily. So that's you can do. And now, Vidamasik Tzunma, and if you want to tell me that the reason why the other person was allowed to plant the tree over there was because there was a rock there the whole time and there's no roots. So 1 second. My bow hasam. My bow, what's the aleph? My bow shroshav hasam. What are the roots doing there? What do you mean that you're allowed to cut away the roots? There's no roots. There was a rock that was blocking your field and his field. What it means to say is like this. It's talking about a new case. And if there was a case where there was no rock, and he planted and he really wasn't supposed to, and then the roots were going into his friend's field. Then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to trim away the roots 3 tvachim deep, so that you should be able to plow your field. Okay. Tashemach, come and listen. It says marchiken esa ilan minabar esrim v'chamashama. If there's a pit in your neighbor's property and you want to plant a tree, so you have to plant the tree 25 amas away from his pit. Right? Your neighbor has a swimming pool. You want to plant a tree, so you can't plant it within 25 amas of this pool.
It's like more than the size of this room.
Yeah. Haima, what's the reason why? That's because he already has his pit over there. But if the pit wasn't there, then samech, then you would be allowed to go as close as you want. Who holds that you're allowed to move up to your friend's field all the way? That's Abaya. According to Rava, this is a problem. According to Rava, you shouldn't be allowed to move all the way up to the friend's field. Should have to be. Even if there is no pit, you should have to be 25 amas away. Where it says light. Even if there is no pit, you're also not allowed to move all the way up. But it's coming to teach us. It's just coming to tell us this. This answer we had a bunch of times before. Coming to tell us that 25 amas is the distance that roots will damage a pit.
So before someone dug a pit, it's a machloket whether or not his neighbor can plant the tree.
Yeah. Well, what's the 3 tvachim for?
Smaller measure. Oh yeah, because
the pit needs to be 3 tvachim away from the wall of the other pit. The tree needs to be 25 amas away because the roots spread.
So 3 amas was from the wall.
3 tvachim was from the wall of, which tells us that every wall is 3 tvachim. So 3 tvachim away from the wall of the pit, just 3 tvachim away from. Okay, the Gemara says, if that's the case, that 25 amas is the reason why it says that if there's a pit there, then you have the distance. It's coming to tell me that 25 amas is the distance of how much the roots will damage a pit. That's how far they'll grow. They think that the roots go as far out as the canopy. But they think, the canopy of the tree, the top, they think the roots go this similar to the canopy. But then I read somewhere that it's not actually so. The roots can go much further than the canopy.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, but that wouldn't be a strong tree.
A lot of time here with the herd, the huge tree, then the roots are not much into the shallow, they really go deep down.
Which trees are that?
There's trees that are
Most of the ones you
deeper
see that are on the ground after the hurricane, they don't have strong roots.
Okay. A lot of them are cracked. None of them are not pulled out of the ground. It's not scientific. So the Gemara says, okay. If that's the case, let's go further. Let's say the tree was first. And then the person dug his pit. It says not a lot of he doesn't need to cut down his tree. He says because the guy next door is making a swimming pool. You can't force the guy to cut down his tree. 1 second. Umar says, if he wasn't allowed to plant it there in the first place, what's the case where we're not going to tell him to cut it down? Of course he should cut it down. You did something that was against the rules. Now it's affecting me when I'm digging my my pool. So you should have to cut it down. It was against the rules in the first place. My answer is Kadamar Rav Papa Belekeyach. This is the way Rav Papa learned this, but that's dealing with someone that purchased. Achanami Belekeyach. Here also is dealing with someone that purchased. Now the explanation here is like this. There was a person that owned a tree and in his field. Then he decided, I'm gonna sell half the field. So he draws a line down the, right next to the tree, sells half the field. The guy that bought the other half of the field, the other half, now wants to dig a pool, to dig a pit in the field. So when the person planted the tree, was he allowed to plant the tree? Of course, it was his field. So the guy that wants to make the pool now can't tell the owner of the tree that you should cut it down. You were never allowed to plant it there because he was allowed to plant it there. At that point, that was a large field. Now that it's divided in half, so now he's saying, 1 second, but you're blocking me. He says no, but he had the rights to do that when he did it. If he would have planted the tree on the border of his field, then he wanted to dig a pit, then we would be able to tell him we're never allowed to plant the tree there. Over here, he planted it halachically correct.
In this case, since he's the owner of the tree, he could cut down the tree.
Yeah.
It's not a fruit tree.
Right. Even fruit trees, when they're causing damage, you're allowed to cut them down. Yeah. Although people are strict about this, but the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch, but yeah, that's what it seems.
Here would be considered damage. Even though he's
Oh,
cutting it too big.
That's a discussion also. That you have to check that out. Daf Yomi is not halacha here, but according to the Alter Rebbe, there's some leniencies here. Look in the English one, volume 12. The white one. Want to bring it? I'll buy it. Even a tree that's not a fruit tree? Really? I know there's according to the city, trees that have a certain circumference, you're not allowed to. Yeah, so here at the end of Dine Shmir Saguf, Nefesh Bal Tashchas, it is permitted to cut down any shade tree, even if one has no use for its wood whatsoever. That means a tree that doesn't give fruit. Similarly, it is permitted to cut down a fruit tree that has aged and produces no more than a minimal amount of fruit, so little that it's not worth taking the trouble to care for it. Similar laws apply to all analogous situations with regard to destroying other entities. It is forbidden to cut down an olive tree that produces a fourth of a cob of olives, a palm tree that produces a cob of dates. Moreover, there's a danger in cutting down fruit trees unless conditions mentioned above are met.
This is
Conditions.
regardless of the age of the tree or
Yeah.
something. That's like
Yeah.
even if the tree's like years old.
Yeah, for example, if a fruit tree is sapping the strength of the earth and thus does harm to other trees that are more valuable than it, one may cut it down. This ruling also applies when one needs the space taken up by a tree to build there, or if it blocks a window's light. Similarly, a tree may be cut down if its wood is more valuable as building material than its edible fruit. Yeah. Anyway, this is the end of Hilchos Shmiras in Chesed Mishpat from Naftali. Shmiras Aguf v'nefesh bal tashchas. So a few halachas. Okay. Tashma. Machikin as a meshra and a yerek. If there's someone who's growing vegetables in one property and his neighbor wants to make wants to prepare flax to make it into linen, so they would soak the flax in water to soften it up. Remember we learned that in Sukkah. soak it and then you beat it and then you comb it. So it was get soaked. How long would they soak it for? I don't know. But it's going to give off a smell and it's going to be anyway, whatever the case is, there's a hole in the ground. No, it's not. We hear the issue is not the hole in the ground. Here the issue is the smell, probably. Several days. So minayerek, besakrisha minabitzalim, and also leeks. That someone wants to plant leeks, not L-E-A-K, but L-E-E-K, right? Wants to plant leeks next to his neighbor's onions. Apparently, leeks and onions are very closely related. And if they are planted next to each other, then because of the cross-pollination, it's going to end up that there won't be any seeds that they'll be able to replant. So it ruins the production if the leeks and the we're not concerned here about kalayim. The concern here is that it's going to actually do a physical damage, not a halachic damage. And then another issue is vesachardel min advairim. You also have to distance your mustard from your neighbor's bees, because what happens is the bees come and eat the nectar, and what they'll do is if it's nectar from a mustard plant, it's going to make like a sharp taste in their mouth, and they're going to go back to get that taste away and eat the honey. So they're going to eat their own honey. The bees are going to end up eating their own supply. And the owner that wants the honey for himself, of course, is going to lose his honey because the bees are going to eat it because of that the sharp taste from the mustard.
Do the farmers want bees? Like, or is it more like
yeah, it's probably usually the bees are beneficial. They pollinate, but over here the bees are not beneficial. Because we're going to see it. We're going to see here the mustard is not beneficial to the bees. That's so far what we're saying. Taima, what's the reason over there why you can't put this smelly water to soak the flax? That's because they're kayerek, because there are vegetables that are growing there. Allah kayerek. But if there is no vegetables there, samach, you're allowed to put it close. 1 second. But if you put it close to the border, then your friend can't put the vegetables there. And according to Abaya, that's acceptable. According to Rava, that's a kasha. The Gemara says, like, even if there's no vegetables, you're also not allowed to put it there because you can't inhibit your friend from doing all whatever things that he wants to do. But Kamash Malan, it's just coming to teach me that these things are harmful to one another. And to tell me the reason of why you need to distance from your neighbor's property is because now your neighbor won't be able to do the following. If that's the case, if you want to say that even if there's no vegetables there, you also have to distance. Let's go further. It says Rabbi Yosi Mati Bechardal. Rabbi Yosi allows a person to plant mustard next to his friend's beehive because he could tell him, the owner of the mustard can say, why are you telling me that I should why are you saying that I need to move my mustard away from your bees? You move your bees. They're destroying my mustard.
Put their belongings first.
According to Abaya, we would say whoever's first is the winner.
Yeah.
We're asking, according to Rava, that says it doesn't matter who's first. Each person needs to be concerned that the other one may want to do that. So 1 second. So over here,
like Rava is more concerned about like etiquette.
Yeah. So over here, how could Rabbi Yosi say? Well, let's go further. The Gemara is going to spell out the question. If he wasn't allowed to be there in the first place, so what's the case that it was there? What are you saying that this one can tell his friend? How come you're complaining about your mustard? How come you're complaining about your bees? I'm complaining about my mustard, but 1 second, but the bees weren't allowed to be there because you're inhibiting me from planting the mustard. Amar Rav Papa B'lekeach. Rav Papa says, no, this is the case where Rav Papa says, no, originally the person owned the whole field. Then he decided to sell half. So when he put the bees there, that was not a problem. Or maybe when he put the mustard there, that wasn't a problem. And then the other one that bought the new part wants to put his bees, so then he can stop it. And according to Rabbi Yossi, he can't stop him. Rabbi Yossi argues. Rabbi Yossi says, "Why are you? You're claiming that that you're damaging me. That I'm damaging you. You're really damaging me." The Gemara says, 1 second. If we're talking about someone that purchased the field,
It's like the same kind of mustard you put on the hot dog or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's
Oh,
just without the yellow food coloring.
oh.
Yeah, Moshe, I think Moshe told me he planted mustard when he was in Eretz Yisrael.
Wondered in this case that he bought the field already with the neighbor having bees or mustard. Would it come into play like, oh, you knew that I had this, but if you wanted to do your bees or your mustard, you could have bought another field.
Yeah, so are you saying because he bought half the field? That's what you're saying, because he bought half the field. Yeah.
His neighbor already had bees, so if he wanted to do the other, it wouldn't work out.
Right. What happened over here is we have a problem. We have a machlekes between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. According to the Rabbanan, no one's allowed to put anything there. Can't put anything close, one next to one another, even beforehand, right? Even before the other person has his mustard, before the other person has his bees, he can't put it there. So,
This is different because he owned the whole field.
okay, 1 second. Before we get to that answer, you're not allowed to put anything near the edge of your field because it's going to affect your neighbor's potential from either planting mustard or putting up the bees. That's how we wanted to explain according to the Rabbanan. Rabbi Yossi says no. You can't tell to stop the person. Now we said 1 second. According to see what Rabbi Yossi does is Rabbi Yossi switches who's the mazik here. We were saying according to the Rabbanan, we said the mazik, who's causing the damage? The mustard is causing damage to the bees. Comes on Rabbi Yossi and he says, why are you saying that the mustard is causing damage to the bees? The bees are causing damage to the mustard. They come and they eat the leaves and the whatever, they nibble at it, they take the whatever, different parts of it, and they're causing damage. So you can't tell me that I have to stop, I have to move my mustard. Your bees are damaging me. And what it seems like is the one that's causing damage has to move. You're the one that's causing damage to me. So he said, 1 second, why was he allowed to be there in the first place? He answered, okay, so they sold half the field. That's why he was allowed to be there. Now, 1 second. According to this, my time of the Rabbanan. What's the problem with the, why according to the Rabbanan, can you tell him that he has to move? Maybe he was the original owner, he owned half the field, and he had his mustard there first. And now the other guy has bees, and now you're complaining about the mustard that I always had. Then another question is, my time with the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, he only argued with the Rabbanan regarding the bees. He didn't argue with the Rabbanan regarding the flax, the water that was soaking the flax, and he didn't argue with them about the what was the third case? Creation. Okay, we didn't mention that. But the same thing should apply. If he was allowed to be there, so why doesn't he say that that he should be allowed to be there anyway? But even in those cases, the case where Rabbi Yossi didn't argue, because he originally owned the whole field. Now, the answer to this Amar Ravina, it's a big discussion. We're not going to do justice to this sugya. This is like a week or two in Yeshiva. Wow. But you see from the size of these taisos in here. Let's just read it through. Amar Ravina says, it could be an Ella Amar Ravina, but Ravina says, Kasabri Rabbanan ala mazik laharchik kasatzmei. The Rabbanan hold, the machlekes here is who is the one that should distance himself, very classical machlekes. The Rabbanan say that the perpetrator is the one that needs to make sure he doesn't cause any damage. Okay, and so therefore, even if the how does this answer the question? Even though originally he did it with permission, that's what we're saying. Even though he originally did it with permission, but now that he's causing damage, he still has to distance himself. And Michlal, but that would imply that the victim should distance himself. In other words, if there's two people that are causing damage one to the other, so who's the one that needs to be careful? Guy that's causing the damage, so you can't cause the damage, you have to move back, or the victim, say the guy that's causing damage, say, don't come so close. You move away. Okay. Take away the rather. I'm not doing that. That's a big discussion. Is there a note on the rather when it says the word rather? Rather, Ravina says, yeah. So ignore that. Ignore that. It's going to change the shot of it. Yeah. And how big is the note on it?
No, it's not big.
Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, Rashi doesn't have the rather. Okay, so the Gemara asks now, Yel and Izik, if it's the victim that needs to distance himself, which is Rabbi Yossi's opinion, so why does Rabbi Yossi not argue also with Mishra v'Yarkanami? Why does Rabbi Yossi not say that the one that has the vegetables there should distance himself as well? Does the Rabbanan say that you can't put your soaking flax next to your neighbor's vegetables? Rabbi Yossi doesn't argue. 1 second. Who's the victim over here? The one that's so you're the victim with the vegetables. So move your vegetables. Don't go so close to my flax, my soaking flax. The Gemara says, Rather, Rabbi Yossi also holds that both of them hold, both Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan hold that the perpetrator needs to distance himself and make sure that he's not going to cause someone else damage.
The fact is that flax and mustard and things like this can't damage anything. Only like bees, pits, things like that. So regardless who planted what or what was there first, it doesn't matter. One thing is obviously going to harm something else as opposed to something else.
Right. But what we're talking here is that you don't want to limit your neighbor from what he's able to do by putting something close to the border. And the Rabbanan were saying, what we were saying now is that the Rabbanan hold you're not even allowed to do it beforehand, even before your neighbor has that. So why'd we say if it's there? Said, well, it's just coming to tell me why you're not allowed to go close, because it's going to be harmful to the bees, because it's going to be harmful to. So Gemara says that really Rabbi Yossi also holds that the perpetrator needs to distance himself. So then why is he arguing with the Rabbanan about the bees? It says, Vachi kamal Rabbi Yossi Rabbanan, and this is what Rabbi Yossi is telling him. Teinach Mesher v'Yarka, I can understand why you should distance, why you need to distance the soaking flax from the vegetables, and the one vegetable from another vegetable, the honey maski honey, because this one will damage that one. But honey le maski honey, but the vegetables don't damage the flax. It's only the flax that damages the vegetables. So therefore, he should move away. The one with the flax should move away because he's the one that's causing damage. But when it comes to the mustard and the bees, both of them are damaging each other. So one can't have a complaint to the other one that you're damaging me because the other one is damaging him. Gemara says, according to the Rabbanan, I'm sorry. I think you read this without a question. According to the Rabbanan, the bees don't damage the mustard. It's only the mustard that damages the bees. The bees, they come and they eat things. It says, well, what are you worried about? If we're talking about the tiny seeds that are in the mustard seeds, they can't reach that. They can't get to it. Maybe they can't eat it. Maybe it's too big for them, or they can't reach it because it's too deep inside the flower. If you're worried about that, it eats the leaves. Hadapari, don't worry, you can't be concerned about that. That grows back. So it's only Rabbi Yossi that holds that the bees are damaging the mustard. The Gemara asks, Rabbi Yossi holds that the one that's causing the damage, he's the one that needs to distance himself to make sure he doesn't cause the damage. But Tanan, we have a clear Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi Aimer, and even if the pit came before the tree, he doesn't need to cut down the tree. Each one is allowed to do whatever he needs in his property, which is clear that the one that's causing the damage doesn't have to be concerned. It's the victim that needs to be concerned. Rather, we're going back to the way we understood it originally. Rabbi Yossi holds that the victim needs to distance himself to make sure he doesn't get hurt. Yeah. It's like there's a guy with the gardeners are mowing the lawn, and they have the machine that cuts the weed whacker. You park your car right next to these guys. So you come back, it's scratched and everything. So 1 second, the gardener was doing his work, right? That's what happens when you you park right there. And the other guy is, he said, don't park right here. You see me working, right? Who has a claim on who? According to the Rabbanan say, no, the mazik has to distance himself. He has to stop working. That's a car there. According to Rabbi Yossi, the nizik, you shouldn't have parked there. You shouldn't have, right? That's what it would come out, something like that. So
sometimes what people do is people park right next to a hydrant. There actually is a fire, God forbid. The fire truck comes and takes the hose and bashes the window in and pulls the hose through the car. Just
really, they
send a message sometimes.
Uh-huh. So
the case of a pit, the first one that digs a pit doesn't cause the damage. It's the second person that comes along and digs his pit to damage the first person.
Right. That's true. They're going this machlekes is going in the machlekes of Abai and Rava is in the opinion of the Rabbanan. In the opinion of the Rabbanan, that the one that's causing damage has to distance himself. So then Rava holds that even before you do the damage, you're already not allowed to get close because it will cause damage. Abai says no, only if it's actually causing damage. So what does Rabbi Yossi tell? If according to Rabbi Yossi, the victim needs to distance themselves. What's he telling the Rabbanan regarding the mustard? He says the Rabbanan Karmalu. He's actually saying, according to me, according to me, the victim needs to distance himself, and that would mean and even when it comes to soaking the flax, there's no problem. You can soak your flax. Your neighbor doesn't like it, tell him to move away. But according to you, the Amrisa that you hold alamazik, that the one that's causing the damage. So I understand the damage that's being caused by the flax that's damaging the other vegetables. Because the flax is damaging the vegetables, the vegetables aren't damaging the flax. When it comes to the bees and the mustard, they're both damaging each other. So he's saying, according to me, there's no problem here anyway, because the nizik has to move away. But according to you, you have to nizik the victim. But according to you, you have to realize that you hold that it's the perpetrator. So both of them are perpetrators. That's what the Rabbi is telling Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan say back, that's not true. Bees don't damage the mustard. It's only the mustard that damages the bees. If you're worried about the little seeds, bees can't reach the seeds anyway. If you're worried about the leaves, those are going to grow back. Okay, it comes out here. There's this machlekes Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan, if it's ala nizik or on the mazik. There was this famous tshuva from Reb Moshe about secondhand smoke. That if someone's smoking in the room, if the other person can tell him that he should stop because it's damaging. So according to the Rabbanan Alamazik, right? According to the Rabbanan Mazik, the damager has to stop. According to the Rabbi Yossi, leave the room. But you don't like the smoke, go somewhere else. Right? That's when Rabbi Moshe said that no. Rabbi Yossi agrees with what the Gemara is going to have. We're going to have a Gemara that when it's Giri delay, even Rabbi Yossi agrees that if you shoot an arrow at, you can't tell the guy you shouldn't have been standing there. You should go away from me. I'm shooting arrow. You can't say that. So we said that secondhand smoke was a Giri delay. It was like shooting an arrow. It's like it's considered like a direct damage, not an indirect damage.
Depends on the area also. It says on property,
Right.
smoking areas, smoking dying.
That's right.
To clarify, this Yossi is Yossi ben Kalafta,
Yeah.
and the Rabbanim are the Rabbanim in Bavel.
No.
No, who are the Rabbanim?
Rabbanan are probably the other students of Rabbi Akiva.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in Bavel we have a machlekes according to the Rabbanan. If you're allowed to Abai and Rava, if you're allowed to move up before the damage is done, before the victim is there.
How do we know who the Rabbanim are? I mean, how do we know that?
That is the Mishnah on Daf Kaf Hey. It says over here, which we didn't get yet. Over there, we're going to have the machlekes, the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi, and that's yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because it's based on a Mishnah. That's how we know. Because in the Mishnah, you have both opinions. Okay. We speak about that. We said there was a wash basin. You weren't allowed to dig that into the ground next to your friend's pit, right? Because it's going to ruin the moisture next to your friend's wall. So it says over here, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Bavul, Leishanu Ela Min HaMechamtzon. We're talking about there's two. Remember we said there were two pits that were used for laundry. One had the detergent in it, and the detergent was surprisingly dog feces, and the other one was the wash, was where you washed off the detergent. At the end, it got clean, but yeah, they use urine also for certain things. The ammonia, for ammonia. But whatever the case is, where was the problem to put this next to the wall? That was mechamtzon. That was one that soaks over there in the manure, in the aval menanadian. But if you're talking about the one that where you agitate it in the to clear off the detergent, that's dalet amas. Over there you have to distance much more than 3 tvachim. There you have to distance 4 amas. Now the reason for that is because they would agitate it a lot. The splash go everywhere to clean it off. Right? This is not where they soaked it. They soaked it, they just pushed it in. But then when they agitated it to clean it off, so that was 4 amas. Tani nami hachi, we have a brisa that says the rech zakes and dalet amas. It says that the laundry pool was 4 amas. We said in the Mishnah that it's only 3 tvachim. It must be Rav Nachman's this way he distinguishes between these two pits. That must be accurate. Some said the same thing. That's a question. Our Mishnah says you have to distance it from the wall 3 tvachim. But Tanya, we have a brisa that says 4 amas. Big difference. 4 amas for 3 tvachim. 1 amma itself is 6 tvachim. So it's way bigger than what the Mishnah says. Rav Nachman, Rav Bavur. Rav Nachman says name of his father-in-law. Rav Bavur lekasha kanmen amachamta kanmen anadia, and it depends which pit. There's 2 laundry pits. We don't know about these 2 things. We do everything in the washing machine. It'd be like one is the washer, one is the dryer, right? That's how we would. But yeah, we're talking about there's 2 parts to the washing machine. Rav Chia Breder Rav Avya Masan LaBehedya. Rav Chia, the son of Rav Avya, he teaches this directly. Elam ken hirchik misvas mechamtzan ala kaisel gimel tvachim, that you have to distance from the mechamtzan, from the detergent pit, 3 tvachim to the wall. Okay, and then it says v'sad b'sid, you have to put plaster. Now, we have several cases in the Mishnah. Case number 1, it says you can't dig a pit next to your friend's pit or other types of pit, or unless you distance from the wall, referring to the wall of the pit, 3 tvachim, and then it says v'sad b'sid and plaster it. And plaster it. Next case of the Mishnah is you have to distance the olive things and the manure and the salt and the lime from the wall 3 tvachim, and then we have a version of the Gemara that says v'sad b'sid or oisad b'sid, either and you plaster it or you and plaster it or you plaster, which means you don't have to do both. You can either distance or plaster. That's what that would mean. Okay, so it comes along our Gemara now, and it says, when it's the first case, it said v'sad b'sid ibaylu, v'sad b'sid tanan. Doesn't mean and you have to do both things. You have to plaster the wall of this pit that you're digging. Or maybe it means that you have an option. Either you distance or you plaster it. The Gemara says, Pshita de v'sad b'sid tanan. It's obvious that it's talking about you have to do both. Because if it meant or, then why do we have to divide the cases in the Mishnah? The other case in the Mishnah is also you have to distance 3 tvachim or plaster it. The first case of the Mishnah must mean and plaster it. That's why we divide it into 2 separate cases, because the halacha is different. It says, no, maybe we divided it, not because the halacha is different. Maybe we divided because the category of damage is different. The first case was the category of damage was because of moisture. The second case, the category of damage was because of the heat that it gives off when it decomposes. Tashma, come and listen, Rabbi Yehuda. Marcella, Babi Yadayim Zechay for Mikan, Zechay for Mikan, Zechay for Mikan. We're talking about earth that crumbles. Each one wants to dig in his property. So it says, Rabbi Yehuda says that you can dig in your field. You can dig in your field. You have to distance 3 handbreadths, 3 tvachim, and plaster the wall. Time of the Babi Yadayim. What's the reason why you need to plaster the wall? That's because it was a special type of soil that crumbles. Oh, like Babi Yadayim, but if it's not a special soil, then you don't have to and plaster it. It's either or. That's what the Gemara thinks. The Gemara says no. The truth is that every type of soil, you always have to plaster it and plaster it, not just or plaster, and plaster. But b'yadayim it's shichalei, and there was a chiddush over here when the soil crumbles, and the chiddush is that salkadait. I mean, I could have thought, given the babi yadayim l'bay rav chatzei, I could have thought that you need even more than 3 tvachim because this soil crumbles. So kamash malan that you only need 3 tvachim. It's not coming to tell me that only here you need to plaster it and not somewhere else. Okay. Let's leave it over here.